4020.
It's a bank holiday, but we're back with another special edition of the 4020 podcast, joined by the Helen Superstar, Emily Rudge. Is Superstar too much? Is that too much of an intro for you?
Probably too much, yeah.
Social media queen? Is that okay?
Probably more appropriate at the minute, yeah.
What? I mean, here's a daft question, because obviously we'll talk about the semi-final a bit. How did you get into doing all that social media stuff? Because you are one of those who is heavily active on there, doing whatever it is you could describe yourself as doing.
Yeah, I just like it. I just really enjoy it. I'm quite creative anyway, so I feel like that's a nice little creative outlet for me. And yeah, I just enjoy it. It's a bit of a funny one really, because when you are playing rugby and you sort of like posting videos and stuff alongside it, people don't always have the best opinion of that, and sometimes it doesn't. I think in the eyes of some more maybe traditional people, it doesn't always seem professional. So it's kind of weird really. I think more people are getting into it, which I love, but it's just keeping it at a level where you're doing what you need to do, but you can still also show other people what you're up to. Because I always think if I was sort of a young girl watching rugby and getting into rugby, I would absolutely love to see what the players are up to, and a bit of behind the scenes and stuff. So, the sort of 11, 12-year-old version of myself would love that. So I think, yeah, that's part of the reason I do it as well. I just enjoy it.
I mean, traditional people are the problem with rugby league from top to bottom, and that's fair enough to say. It's a stupid additional pressure. I keep saying this about women's rugby league, is that you almost have to be cleaner than clean, because anything you do that's... I'm paying no attention to the Six Nations, but there's the thing where someone was dancing after a game and everyone got upset about it. It's like, I don't know what we're supposed to do anymore. You need to be personalities, you need to be characters.
Yeah.
It's not as if you're dancing in the middle of a game with your phone out.
Yeah, of course.
Not yet, anyway. Not yet.
No, no. Yeah, it's a tough one, because you do want to show that sort of fun side, and you do. I hope that by putting videos out there, it does help to grow the game in a positive way. There's definitely no negative videos that I ever tried to put out. I always try to show the game in a positive way. But yeah, it's not always perceived that way, is it? And people sort of have these opinions of what you should and shouldn't be doing. And some people don't think that you should be on your phone filming parts of playing rugby. So yeah, it's hard. You do get that backlash. We've had it. I know that the England girls had it when they was out in Vegas for a video. And usually, it's sort of misconceptions. People think you're doing one thing and actually you're not. They think you're doing it right before a game, but that's not actually what's happening. Of course, if that was the reality, that would probably be inappropriate, but at Saints they have me on very strict rules, Deck and Craig. They actually don't let me use my phone at all at training, so that's been tough this year, because as soon as they see me with my phone, they're like, away now. So yeah, there's not a lot of behind the scenes that I can actually do without pissing people off, really.
For those of us who were born in 1895, what are your social media channels of choice? Where should we be looking out for you?
I predominantly use Instagram. I love Instagram, but I do post on TikTok and Facebook as well. Yeah, I just try to post as much stuff as possible. I think it's a good way to grow the game, for people, because I see other sports on there and other athletes, and I find that interesting to know what other sort of athletes are training and what their regimes are, and their little things that they get up to. I personally find that interesting as somebody who's into sport. So I hope other people find that interesting as well, and it maybe brings more eyes onto women's rugby league. So yeah, mainly Instagram, TikTok are the ones.
So in terms of being therapeutic for you as well, I mean, you're asked to do a hell of a lot with very little reward so far yet in the women's game. We're all hoping that that's going to change over time. But is this a help to you? Does it aid you to concentrate on the rugby side of things when you're doing that, and gives you a little diversion? You're not?
Yeah, definitely. It does sort of keep me busy in other ways. I really like to be busy. I don't ever like to sort of sit around and be doing nothing. I like to be proactive and always keeping busy. So yeah, it sort of does help to distract me in a way. Although a lot of the videos are to constantly be thinking about rugby, and it is just like a different outlet for me, and a way to be creative, a way sort of within the game but away from it as well.
What are those things you put on your legs? Those things that look like giant socks. After a game? What? Because this is my social media
Yeah.
is not invented for me and Phil. It's invented for the younger people, as you say. But there's my question. What are those things? What do they do?
They're like these leg compressions. So you zip them all the way up, like from toe to top of your leg, and they basically just inflate with air, and it like squeezes your legs, so it compresses them, which is meant to like encourage the blood flow, which is meant to get rid of like the lactic acid build up after a game or after training. So it's meant to help improve recovery. That's why I use them really. So yeah, I've been using them after training and after a game, and they've been pretty good so far.
Do you get many people trying to do collabs and stuff? Because I understand that's a word the young people say.
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, I do have some people approach me about different things. I'm just sort of kind of trying to be careful though with stuff because I don't want to like, sometimes people want you to promote things, but I definitely don't want to promote something just for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? I would only really promote something that I would want to use and would actually benefit me because I am conscious that there are younger eyes maybe watching, and I definitely wouldn't want to influence them in something that wouldn't be, a positive in their life or in their training or whatever. So yeah, it's difficult really because I think that's one way you can sort of make money from doing social media, but also I don't want to go down sort of the wrong paths with that. So yeah, I'm just trying to grow it and enjoy it and sort of be positive in when I'm doing it as well.
I mean, we turn down male grooming products, so we know how important it is to be influencers.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely influencers. Rugby, York semi-final Challenge Cup. How's the season gone so far? At the launch a few weeks ago, saying how excited are you for the season to all the players, but now you're in there, you're in the semi-final. You four Challenge Cups in a row, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So it is.
So going for five now.
Yeah, yeah. So the pressure's on definitely. But we've had a good start to the season. We've had some probably as it's been the early rounds of the Challenge Cup. Some of the games have been probably slightly easier games because the teams are not in our league; they're in sort of leagues and divisions below. But we see we've had a really good preseason, and I feel like we've gone into the season feeling strong and working sort of well as a squad. So this is exciting this weekend because this is our first proper test where we know it's going to be a super competitive game and we have to be on top form if we want to, get to another Challenge Cup final.
I'm just going back to the social media for one moment because this is a learning day for me. There's words being thrown about. I have no idea what either of you are talking about. Have IMG helped in any way? Because this is something again that they wanted to promote, not only the profile of the players, but I think they are behind the promotion of the women's game. Have they given you any pointers on this?
Yeah, I did that sort of a thing with IMG through what was the 2022 World Cup, and they sort of had a couple of players from the wheelchair, the men's and the women's teams, and they just like worked with me and a couple of other players, and just it was mainly like sessions that they sort of helped you, taught you how to do certain things and shown you how to like edit videos and like best sort of things to post and just sort of like all information about social media really and trying to be that sort of side of your kind of career as well. So yeah, I've definitely had some support through them through the World Cup, and then since then I've definitely used some of that, moving forward. But yeah, probably since then not too much help and support, but I know that like you say that is one of their sort of focuses, which I totally agree with. I love to see stars within the game and personalities within the game. I think that find that interesting. As alongside the game, who's sort of the characters in the teams and stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely all for that. I don't know if that's the views of everyone in within rugby league, but I definitely think that's a
Just going back to the game at the weekend, obviously you're at home, no fault of your own, because it's tied into the men's semi-finals as well, and that happens to be the chosen venue. Have you been surprised at some of the people coming out saying it gives you a huge advantage when clearly they've forgotten that you actually hosted the grand final against the same opponents last year?
Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because I do feel that we shouldn't be in this position where Saints are, we are playing at home, because personally I do feel like that is an advantage. It maybe not for everyone, but for me personally, I love playing at home, and I feel really that we're playing it at home. And if it was the other way around, I wouldn't be happy. I don't particularly love traveling to York. So if it was the switched round, then I would probably be unhappy about that as well. And I think, although it benefits me, I'd rather see it played probably as a neutral venue. And it does sort of bother me that I think sometimes the women are a side note, and the men's game is obviously the priority of being impartial, and then it's like, oh well, the women, it doesn't matter, they'll just make do. And I think, well, no, if you want it to be sort of the same level, and we want to play on the same sort of pitch and the same day, then it should be fair for everyone. I do think that. I mean, I totally agree with you. York did beat us at home last season, so that should give them a lot of confidence. But if I look at it, from not with my Saints women's player hat on, I do feel that it should be also neutral venue for the women as well.
Well, I mean, friend of the show, Abigail, who's 10 and speaks more sense than us, she said on social media, I think she's copying off you, that she would prefer to go to a neutral venue and see a double header or whatever, because she doesn't want to pay 30 quid or whatever to see a men's game she's not interested in. I mean, are we at the point where we can have a double header on its own for the women's game?
It's tough, really. I think there's pros and cons, like you say. I do think that there was the option. I think, if I'm right, there was the option to play at a neutral venue, but it wouldn't have been in the same day as the men, and so therefore, it probably wouldn't have been on TV, and it probably would have been a fairly empty crowd in terms of like comparatively what it's going to be. So, what is better for the women's game? Is it better to show it on TV? And yes, it's at Saints venue, but it's double header with the men. You're getting a bigger crowd there. You're making a bit of a showcase out of it. Or do you go to a neutral event where there's maybe 1,000, 2,000 people there and it's not on TV? I think there's positives to both, but I do think I'm happy that it is going to be shown on TV, and I am happy that it's going to be played in a stadium with a full crowd. I personally don't think, from previous games, I don't think we're probably at that stage where we can fill a stadium. We're only getting between 500 and 1,000 usually on average at a Saints game, and at the finals, I think the record is still about 5,000. So, I think there's still work to do there in terms of building the crowd up for the women's game. And I think double headers does help that. And it does, definitely bring more eyes on it. I know, personally from fans telling us, oh, I seen you at the men's game and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So ever since then, I've followed you. So that does bring more fans into the women's game. And I hope, yeah, like you say, in the next few years, we will be able to do standalone finals and semi-finals and get the big crowds there, because ultimately that's got to be the goal. That would be incredible.
What do we do with the women's game? Because everyone has an opinion on it, even those who don't care, because they'll see a scoreline like you beating Warrington by 100 points, and we'll touch on England in a bit. But what can we do? Is there anything we can do right now? Because obviously there's so many more young girls playing rugby league than ever before, and in the future there's going to be a lot more young girls who are a lot more talented. No disrespect, coming along the line,
I agree,
because there's a bigger pool of talent. So we can't just jump to that. We can't jump 10, 15 years in the future. How do we make things more competitive in 2025, 2026?
I think it's it's hard, and I don't think anybody probably has the answers. I think probably the one answer is money and investment. I think that probably solves a lot of problems, because if you can put more money into the game, you can get players, better sort of training facilities, better everything really. Money will bring, but there's not a lot of money in women's rugby league or rugby league in general, so that isn't something that is likely. I think each year I do see the game grow, and I do see, although they may be small some years, there is positive steps in it in the right direction. And like you say, the game's growing. The next couple of years will have an influx of much younger, more talented and exciting players to watch. And I think, just with time, naturally, the game will grow. Um, as for right now, what we could do, I don't think there's a quick fix, unfortunately. I think, we're doing the best we can in terms of like trying to be the best versions of ourselves. But, how can you be the best version of yourself when you are working full time? I think I've seen that recently. I was off for 2 weeks over Easter because I'm a teacher, and I spoke to some of the girls about it who are also teachers, and throughout that 2 weeks, obviously I'm going to training and playing games, felt great mentally, felt really clear head, physically felt great, had loads of sleep, was well rested, didn't feel stressed, felt great. Went back to on after Easter on the Monday, training on Tuesday. Oh my God, I was like, wow, the comparison that I don't see, but when I'm off, I was knackered. I didn't want to go to training. I couldn't be bothered. It was like late after work. I had a headache. I was stressed. I was worried about all the things I had to do for the next day. And I was thinking, God, long term, people working a full-time job, but also trying to be the best version of yourself, it just can't match, unfortunately. And we are doing the best we can, but ultimately I think that would be a way to maybe improve the game. But there's, like you say, there's not, that's not going to happen anytime soon, really. So we just have to sort of do what we can with the game at the minute.
You mentioned the influx of young players, and looking through the squads for Super League this year, everyone's talking about the academy players that they're bringing through and how exciting they're going to be and the talent that they are. We've also seen a little bit of an addition of Australian players, certainly 3 or 4 of the clubs. Does that help us in the short term? Because we talk a lot about people like Paige going to the NRLW. Does having, people like Mel Howard coming over here who's played State of Origin, is that a short-term fix in some ways?
Yeah, I really like the idea of that. I think that's great. I think that, the more competitive we can make the games, and the sort of the better competition it is, I think that will definitely help to grow the game. Nobody really wants to go and see Saints beat a team 100-0. Even my family don't even really want to go and watch those games. They don't find that particularly entertaining. So if my own family don't really enjoy those games, I'm sure other fans don't really want to pay their hard-earned money to go and watch those games. So yeah, I think bringing better players in is surely only a benefit. It makes us probably have to work harder to keep our shirts and maintain our spot in the team. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I quite like that. I love the competitive games. I really. Probably shouldn't say this, but I wish we could just play York, Wigan, and Leeds on a rotation on a weekly basis, because they're sort of like why we train so hard, and they're the games that I love. And I'd love the full league to be that competitive. And I think fans would like that as well. So yeah, I think anything we can do to sort of improve the game overall and the showcase of it, then yeah, I think that definitely would help to grow the game overall.
You think we have tried to expand a bit too quickly? I mean, clearly that it looks great promotionally if you've got teams playing in an 8-team Super League, and you've got maybe London and Cardiff in the division below. But the NRLW stuck with 4 teams until the time where they knew they could promote the game as a talent idea, as a standard, rather than just a participation. Do you think that maybe we tried to run before we walked? And if we did only play those teams, maybe 3 times a year, and you put in 3 East v West Origin games, funnily enough, 2 teams in Yorkshire, 2 teams in the Northwest, that would perhaps have worked with maybe a national division underneath?
Yeah, potentially. I think it's hard because I know in the NRLW they play considerably less games than we do. And I think, as a player selfishly, I definitely wouldn't want to go to that model if I was only going to play sort of like 10, 12 games a season. Um, but then again, like the other side of it, you say you are playing easier games. So I mean, yeah, I guess I do like the idea of the Lancashire Yorkshire. I really love those games. I think for the women especially, I don't know whether it's sort of never properly worked with the men, has it? But I think for the women, it's been really good competitive games, and I think they're great games to watch as well. So I think as well as talking about trying to put the game in the best possible position and grow better talent, I think competitive games are the way to do that. And picking an England team to play against like Wales or France, which have been fairly easy games for them, I think having that sort of competitive Lancashire Yorkshire games, they're never easy games. They are really competitive, probably more so than some of the international games have been recently. So yeah, that I think that could be a good idea moving forward if you can't get sort of the teams in the lower end of the league to match. And to be honest, I think if you are part of a team who is getting beat by a considerable amount, you probably as a player don't want to play those games either. I can't think that would be particularly helpful to play those games. Obviously you do want to play better opposition, but you don't want to be getting beat 100-0 like that. That can't be beneficial for those players. So yeah, I think more competitive games would definitely be better overall.
Right, so here we go. The door's been opened ages ago. I said this. Vegas, which I thought Australia would win. I thought they'd win comfortably. I didn't think they'd win by what happened. You mentioned teams losing by heavy scores and what that does to players. Lindsay Anfield told us a few weeks ago that she had to talk players into still playing at York after that defeat. I mean, the first question is almost facetious, but obviously you wanted to be there. You weren't there. In hindsight, were you glad you weren't there on the pitch, or would you rather have been? It's a tricky one, I know.
That because yeah, I think ultimately I still would have liked to have been there, and I think for me personally, I would have liked to test myself against Australia. And I know obviously the scoreline and everything about the game, but yeah, I still like to have been part of that game. I think that it was really hard because I don't think anybody probably expected that scoreline. Otherwise, I don't think they would have put that on that stage. I really don't. And I think it was expected to be closer. And even myself, I thought it would be a lot closer. Just going off playing against New Zealand in the semi-final of the World Cup, ultimately that was a competitive game. It was really close at halftime, and it was only sort of the last 20 minutes of the game that they sort of scored a couple of tries. But that was a good game to watch, in my opinion. And a lot of fans enjoyed that. It was competitive, and I felt like we did match them on a level, on a number of different ways, should I say? So going from that to then getting beat by that scoreline was quite shocking to me. And yeah, that's really upsetting that players then off the back of that felt like they maybe didn't want to be part of the sport anymore. That's upsetting for me, and I don't like to hear that. That players then had such a sort of negative experience that they then doubted whether the sport was for them. So yeah, that's not ideal. I think it would have been great for the game if they could have gone there and it would have been a competitive match, because that would have brought on reams of positives and benefits for England and our sort of like league moving forward. But we weren't obviously quite ready to take that challenge on at that time. So
we talk about social media stuff, and obviously there's a lot of negativity in terms of and abuse from people, which obviously is the bad side of the thing. But was too much made pre-match of the players enjoying themselves? I don't think we saw much training footage or stuff like that, but we saw that everyone's going to pick up on the dancing. Everyone's going to pick up on the dancing because team loses by that score. they're just up on a jolly, and we know they weren't. But
No.
could we have managed things better in the build up, so to speak?
Probably. I definitely think that added fuel to the fire of seeing those videos. I think be people who have negative opinions of women's rugby league anyway, and then the scoreline didn't help because it gave them something to moan about and complain about. But then the other side of it, they just see that as like that is what they're doing. And obviously that is not the case. Like when you go out on tour, it's good. I guess it's good to show those little clips, but not if that's just all you're showing, because that is definitely not what tour is like. It is extremely like regimented, scheduled. You have literally zero downtime. Honestly, every sort of hour of the day is planned out for you, and you've got to be here, there, doing all recovery and sort of eating at these times and all sorts of stuff. There is, and obviously I'm really close with Jodie and spoke to her on a regular basis, and Jodie's like said the downtime was so minimal. She hardly even got to see her family who was out there. I think she's seen them on one occasion for like not long at all. So, if you only see those bits of it, people will assume probably the wrong things and then jump to conclusions about reasons why the scoreline is what it is. So yeah, I think, like you say, it might have been better to show different sides of the training and other parts of it, but also I do think you've got to show that side as well, and I still seen videos of Australia dancing around and enjoying themselves and sort of getting into it with the crowd and having a good time. But I'm pretty sure Australia didn't get the same backlash from doing that because they won. So it's I think it maybe wouldn't have been a problem if England would have been competitive and would have even won the game. Nobody would have probably even commented on that. But unfortunately, because that's not how it played out, people like to pick up on things. So
have you been given any assurances that the door's still open for you at an international level?
Yeah, I have had a conversation with Stu before they went out to Vegas, and he did say that to me. So yeah, hopefully that is the case. I think for me, it's a tough one because I did feel like I was good enough to be part of that squad, and I think that that's me fully backing myself. But if I don't back myself, then who is going to? I do think that I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I can do, and I think that I didn't have a great season last year, and I didn't show some of the things that I know that I'm capable of, and I didn't play as well as I should have done in some of the bigger games, and that was my own doing because I'd cruised a little bit last season. I was just enjoying my life. I was happy. I was just doing what I needed to do, but I wasn't sort of like drilling myself to work extremely hard, and then therefore, if you're not working extremely hard, you can't expect to get picked for England. And that was the case with the Wales game. But then since the Wales game, that was a massive kick up the arse for me because I was like, right, that's your own doing. But there's time to sort of fix it and correct it. Obviously, that was October. And then I feel like I did work extremely hard and get myself sort of back to where I should be. But Stu was saying that he was picking the team on, the sort of current form of the season, and without having a game as such from between the end of season and the sort of selection for Vegas, then he couldn't pick me. So that was hard because I was like, well, there was never going to be a game, so how was I meant to get back in? If that's the reason I can't be picked. But I know that I've just got to have a good season, and I've got to play well, and I've got to be, up there with the best of them if you want to get picked for England. I think that's the same in any sport. You've got to be playing your best. You can't expect to cruise through the season and get an England shirt. So, that's fair enough. And I think that's definitely changed my sort of mindset for this season and the next couple of seasons that I'm playing.
And I guess that if you needed incentive, which you don't because of what you've achieved in the game already, you've got a World Cup on the horizon. So again, you could be in Australia and PNG, depending on how the groups are drawn at the end of 2026. So I would imagine that's a goal for you now at the moment.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely a goal for me. That's definitely something that I want to strive towards. I think in some ways, not being part of that Vegas trip, I think, like you mentioned before, I think some people did have some negative experiences. Obviously, I didn't experience any of that. So I'm fully like excited and keen to sort of compete at that level and play at that level. And I've not been put off at all by that. So yeah, that's definitely something that I would love to be part of. When the next international games come up this year and next year with the World Cup. But yeah, like I said before, I know that I've got to just make sure that I'm playing well ultimately, because you're not going to get big for England if you're not playing well. So yeah, that's on me, and I've got to make sure I have a good season at Saints. So yeah, that's what I'm aiming to do.
It would help, of course, if we knew who England were going to play next, which obviously we don't.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah.
There's nothing more anyone can say about that, because it's just, it's rugby league.
Yes.
What's the future plan for Saints women related board game shenanigans? How did you come up with Guess Who?
I don't know. I've seen it on like a social media thing, or sort of got the idea for it. But that again is just like me being like, I like to be like creative and do little things at home. So yeah, the girls really loved that. And quite a few people messaged me actually and was like, "Can you make me one?" And I was thinking, God, I could have a little business here making Guess Who for different teams. So yeah.
Are any of the players just completely, they're not into your shenanigans when you're on the coach? Or they hide away from you?
Oh, massively. Yeah, 100%. In fact, I'd probably say the majority of people are not into it. And most of the videos that I do, whenever you see another player in the video, they've not been willing to do that. I've had to somehow bribe them or force them to do it. That nobody really wants to be part of anything. But I sort of do know now. I've learned like who I can get to do certain things and who I just cannot get to do anything. So yeah, I do have to sort of like play it cleverly that I know like certain people won't be on a video. And then I did a question and answer on the bus on the way home, and to be honest, I thought they'd have more patience and tolerance, but they didn't. They were just like, right, enough now, Rudge. We don't want to answer any more questions. I was like, guys, come on, it's for the fans. And they were like, no, sorry, leave me alone. So there's definitely a limit to how much they'll do. And yeah, like you say, there's not that much willingness really in our team to be part of it.
Final one from me, because we're running out of time. How important is that semi-final going to be, and having that home support, because you have got 5 Challenge Cups in a row in sight, but also coming up against the team who are good. They're going to be the biggest challenge you face this year because they beat you in the grand final. 2 grand finals in a row. No one's done that before. It's going to be the first real test. It should be a great game as well.
It'll be such a mega game. It'll be so when we play York. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's massive for Saints. The pressure is really on us. I think we're sort of, we've won it 4 times. We definitely don't want to see another team playing at Wembley and lifting that trophy. We've had the honour and the pleasure of doing that for the last 2 years. That would be so hard and to watch another team do that. So I think we are fully, geared to play our best and go out there and make it to another final. But it's going to be so tough. And, we seen that in the grand final last year that, a couple of mistakes and, you switch off here and there, then, York will be super competitive. And I know that with them not being at Wembley the last couple of years and not having that opportunity, they're going to be hungrier than ever to come and take that from us. So it should be a great game to watch.
Just one final question from me. You mentioned that you probably don't have as many characters doing your social media that you'd like. You've got 2 back this year in Henry and Shona. I would imagine they're not backward in coming forward.
Shona, no. Shona's not that hard to persuade. She's probably my number 1 go-to. Amy, actually, no. Amy does not like being in front of the camera at all. I did one video with her when she first signed at the start of the season, and I think she must have got a bit of like family and friends taking the mick out of her. And ever since then, she's like, I'm not doing it. No, don't want to be part of it. So Amy's actually really hard to get to do anything. So if you do see Amy Hardcastle on a video, I don't know how I will have managed her to do that, but I've definitely been a bribe in there somewhere.
Well, if you get to Wembley, I'm sure she'll do anything for you.
Hopefully, yeah.
Emily, thank you very much for your time. Good luck on Saturday. And I'm sure we'll speak to you again in the future. And yeah, good luck and all that stuff.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys. Thank you.